Well, welcome everyone. Welcome everyone. It is a little after 7. We're glad you're here. Thank you for taking another Wednesday evening to join us and to talk about pastoral relations. And so the past couple of weeks, some of you may have been here for all three sessions, and others maybe joined one or two. But just to kind of review a little bit about why we're doing this, we are introducing the whole idea of the community of faith profile to you, because part of the United Church agreement is that every community of faith across the denomination will have a community of faith profile that's posted on Church Hub. And that permits the General Council to communicate with the communities of faith. It permits the Regional Council to communicate in some ways with the communities of faith. For instance, we'll be taking a look at Church Hub this evening, and you'll find that it's a place where you're going to fill in your annual statistics form as a community of faith, or find out what your annual General Council assessment is for the year. So there's parts of the General Council office collecting information about communities of faith, but also communicating back to the communities of faith. So all communities of faith are to have a profile on Church Hub. And so even if you're not involved in a change of pastoral relations, a search for a new minister, it's important that people in your congregation, you, know how to go about posting your statistics and your living faith story. As well, all the ministry personnel who are with us have a page, a profile, ministry personnel profile, and you're to fill that out with your information as well. It's where you make changes of contact information too for both communities and ministry personnel. And so that's one big reason why we're doing this. And the other reason is that we have need of people to assist pastoral charges, communities of faith, as they're searching for new ministry personnel. And we're hoping that this might spark some inspiration in some of you to say, I'd like to do that, or I'd like to do parts of that, and to let us know about that. So we'll be looking at the additional step that communities of faith need to take in order to be posted as a vacant pastoral charge, or to tell people you have a vacant pastoral charge or position. So, so that's what we're about. We did look at some initial things about holy manners, roles and responsibilities, who's responsible for what in the process. We looked at the parts of the community of faith profile, and we talked about how to develop a living faith story. That was the first night. Last week we talked about some factors that need to be considered depending on how a change in pastoral relations is taking place, whether it's a retirement or just a request to move elsewhere. We talked about the different components of a search process, including how to have a fair and consistent interview practice. And we talked about biases and how to be as open as possible to the applications we receive. So tonight it's Church Hub, and then we're going to talk about some of the interesting, challenging questions or conversations that come up. So welcome, and prayer is always good. Let's begin with prayer. We take a deep breath and we're reminded that the Spirit of God is the breath of our life, the breath of our planet, the breath of the universe beyond. We breathe in and we remember that the Spirit of life has flown over the face of the earth for generations, and the air that we breathe has been breathed before by our ancestors in faith, by creatures who have wandered the earth, by the plants that give life to creation. And as we come this evening to be part of the people of faith who follow the way of Christ, we're aware that the Spirit is with us, that through us, God is working to bring good and wholeness and healing and compassion and understanding into the world. Our communities are important to this hope of God. Our lives incarnate that hope. And so we pray for the blessing of the Spirit to be with us, that we may have open minds and open hearts as we share this evening together. And we pray this in the name of the one that we follow. Amen.
Earl, do you want to ask folks to enter their names and their locations in the chat?
I think you just did. Thanks, Susan. So this is a little bit of practice. If you're doing a Zoom meeting, you want to be able to use the tools. So we'd invite you just to open the chat box at the bottom of your screen, probably. There is a little box that says chat. Open that up, write in your name and where you're from. And we'll just have a little practice, and you can read over the names and see who all is here this evening.
And if you're on a tablet and you're new to Zoom, you might find that box. If you tap the upper part of your screen, you might find it over to the side or even up on top, depending upon what kind of tablet. So you may have to play with it a bit.
So we're going to take you on a bit of a journey now into the land of Church Hub. And so we come here to the sign-in screen for Church Hub. And as I said, this is a place where communities of faith find their profiles as well as ministry personnel. And so Earl Rayburn has signed in here, but that's not who we want to follow this evening. Our regional council has a guest account that we can use to teach our committees about Church Hub. So if you're wanting to kind of just explore Church Hub, we can provide this site to you, and you can journey around on it a bit. Great. So when you come on to your first page of your account, if you're coming on as a member of a community of faith, you're going to see the two buttons on your right that say My Community of Faith page and Change Community of Faith Contact Info. If you come on as a ministry person, you're going to see the two buttons that are on the left, My Ministry page and the Change My Contact Info button below it. You won't see all four buttons on your page. You'll just see the two that belong to your particular role in the church. So, but otherwise, this first page is the same for everyone. It's going to have your name at the top, whether you're an individual or a community of faith, and then offer you these portal accesses. So let's go into the community of faith portal, and we always have to, oh good, it's being cooperative this evening and not taking a lot of time. So we clicked on my community of faith, and it brought us to this page. And this is where you see the variety of things that can be done on Church Hub. Now, usually there are graphics on all these buttons, but here's obviously where you change your, if you get a new phone number or a new email address at the community of faith, change it here. We'll come back to this one. This is the community of faith profile that's used by all communities of faith. Here's the Find a New Minister button beside it that's used by communities of faith that are searching for new ministry personnel leadership. There's a couple of other things here I want to just point out. One is the Community of Faith private folder. So this is where documents such as the call form for the minister who's serving your pastoral charge, you can find it in this private folder. It will be put there by the General Counsel office. So these are documents that only the administrator of Church Hub has immediate access to, and they're meant for the eyes of the people of the community of faith only. Because here you have a published content button, takes you into a place where you can share documents more widely beyond the community of faith. So this just two places to keep different kinds of documents. When you come to the end of the search process and are ready to issue a call to a minister or ask that a minister be appointed, here's where you find the record of call or appointment form that you fill out and send in to us for approval at the Regional Council. Down here are some other general buttons. Here's where your annual statistics are. And so this is how you're going to file them rather than on paper, as we've done for many, many, many years. Here's where you find out about your annual assessment and what your payments and things are. Here's where you're going to list all the different officers in your church so that we know who your board chairperson is, your secretary, treasurer, M&P person. All those kinds of roles are here. And we'll talk about, well, might as well talk about it now. There's going to be a change on Church Hub so that we're going to add the chairperson or a member of the search team as an officer of the community of faith, so that that person can access the Church Hub account and see the list of ministry personnel who are open to making a change in pastoral relations, open to talking to search committees, and that access, which will be removed from the administrator of Church Hub, so that only search committees can see that list. And if you have trouble or questions, here's the request assistance button. So that's what you find here. Let's just go here to the community of faith profile. Now, so you see at the top of the page here, there's watch a video on how to do this. And there are several videos that are available to help you navigate through Church Hub. We're just going to take a really quick look at it tonight, and you can watch the videos to go into more detail. So, you know that living faith story we were talking about? This is where you put it. When it's written, you're going to probably cut and paste from the document, the Word document or whatever that you've used to write it. And you're going to cut and paste it into here. And every time you make a change on these pages, it's really important to hit the update button, because that's what saves the information that you've just put in. Here's where you would indicate whether or not your community of faith has a solo team ministry. And over here are some kind of unique descriptors of communities of faith that we have. So in our region, we have 2 indigenous communities of faith, so they would check off this. If your community of faith is officially an affirming community of faith, so has been given that designation, then you would indicate here. And if, such as Korean United Church or Chinese United Church, you have a linguistic or an ethnocultural specific designation, then you would indicate that here. So I want you just to notice this community of faith has a MANT button, and we've got it checked indicating that yes, they do. So here's the list of pages that we're asking you to fill out, and this is you essentially doing your annual statistics for the year. That information will be saved from year to year, and so every year at this time you would go in and you'd update the information. You're not going to have to re-enter everything. If something remains the same, you just leave it the same, but otherwise you're going to update it. Now, just before we launch into that, I want to show you what happens if we unclick this. The list is shorter because you don't have the items about a MANTS that you need to fill in. But, so essentially, we open these pages, and that maybe looks very familiar to the person who's been doing your statistics for many, many years, because it is the same.
Mm.
And so, so that's how you're going to fill in all that information about your community of faith. Again, we ask that all pastoral charges complete that part of the community of faith profile. When a pastoral or when a community of faith is looking for a new ministry person, they're going to use this other button, Find a New Minister. And on the left side here, we've got the Submit a New Position button. And so we click that, and this is where you're going to see all the other stuff we've been talking about in the last couple of weeks. So you're going to complete all of this, and again, at the bottom, there's a different button. When you click this button to save your changes, that automatically sends this information to the regional council office, and I receive it on my computer, and then I provide it to the Pastoral Relations Commission for their review and approval of, because this is the part of the community of faith profile that's specifically about looking for new ministry personnel. So lots of things here. Some you click and a calendar shows up. Others you click and a menu drops down. It's all pretty self-explanatory, I think. When you come to putting in a position description, you're going to open this button. And this, what's written in here is just, as they say, remove this so that you can put your material in here or your position description in here. But this is a guide, again, on how to write the things to include in a community or in a position description. And yeah, so it's not prescriptive. You can vary it, but it's there for you to look at. And again, another video for you to watch about doing that. So once you've done all of that, you hit that gray button, and what you're going to be sending us, I'm just gonna, at this point, switch screens here to another one, because I want to show you what comes out the other end. We thank the folks of Sedgwick for their work. They did a good job. When I get the Community of Faith profile and take it to the Pastoral Relations Commission, this is what they see. And this is what a minister will see as well when they're looking at your profile on Church Hub, looking for a new position. So you see here, and things are a little out of order. That's not Sedgwick's fault. That's the way it's come out. But here's their living faith story. Here, under our mission, they have also included a description of their governance structure, some information about their worship services and other parts of their life and work together. They've included a little bit about what the surveys they did said, and then a community profile as well. So what they've done here is basically written a document and cut and pasted it into their Community of Faith profile, and this is how it comes out on the other end. And then, in addition to that, here's all the statistics that they've entered. And so a ministry person looking at this pastoral charges profile would see all the statistics as well as the written submission that they've made. Okay. Just want to show you another one quickly. Here's Fort Nelson's, and what they decided to do was to provide a link to a document that they've got in that shared documents folder. And so if you click on the link here, it would take you to a larger document that would have their living faith story and descriptions of their community and such in it. And then on this page, along with that link, you see all the statistical information as well. So that's what comes out the other end. That's what people are seeing when they're looking at these profiles. And I thought it would be important just to kind of let you know that that's what people are seeing at the other end. When we go to the ministry side of things, just a minute, I'm going to get my share button back. There. So now when we go over here to the ministry side, a large part of it is the same, but there are some significant differences. And this is why it's hard for a minister to tell a congregation how to use Church Hub, and why it's hard for a congregational member to tell a minister how to fill out theirs, because they're not exactly the same. Again, we have a change of contact information. This is where they're going to go to find the record of call or appointment that you have approved in your congregation, so that they can then approve it, and then it comes to me, and we take it to Pastoral Relations Commission for their approval. The They also have a private documents folder. This is where they might keep, our Office of Vocation Minister suggested, this is where you might keep a copy of your latest police record check, because they always ask you what the date of it was, and none of us can ever remember. So just keep a copy of it in there. And here are some public, this is a place where you could, again, share documents that you want to share more widely. There's a help button. And so these two buttons are different, My Profile and Find a New Ministry. Just take a quick look in here in the My Profile page. So you'll see that it looks different. It's asking questions about an individual. So, for instance, they would put in here a request for a change of regional council membership, what languages they use, whether they're looking for full-time or part-time work, which regional councils they'd be willing to serve in, how they want to be contacted, whether or not they've got interim ministry designation, that special designation. If it's a retired minister and all they want to do is renew their appointment, or an active minister just renewing an appointment, they can click here and not worry about the rest of it, because the rest is where the ministry personnel edit or enter all their basically their resume information. So there has to be something in here in order for our Office of Vocation Minister to be able to click her button that posts your profile on Church Hub, so that search committees can see your information. Again, an update button at the bottom. That's how you save it, so that it's there when you expect it to be. And then to find a new ministry page, I'm curious about this, what we're going to find here, because essentially this should be, oh yeah, there we go. So this is the list of, there, we'll look at this one because it's not one of ours. So this is how a minister sees the profile to begin with. It's just kind of a snapshot, and then they can click this button down here and get that whole picture that we saw a while ago, that longer sheet with the statistics. So this is what it looks like when your position is posted on Church Hub, and what a minister sees that catches their interest. So you see that what you put in there at the beginning is kind of important, because that's going to be what draws somebody into opening your profile. Okay. When a minister wants to be available, they would click this button, and that takes their information to the Office of Vocation Minister, who can post it on Church Hub for the minister. And when the minister has accepted a call, you come back here and you click the button that says, I'm no longer available. I have a position that I'm going to. And likewise for the communities of faith who are searching, when you have, when your new call or new appointment has been approved, you need to go back onto Church Hub and click the button that says we no longer have a vacant position. Okay, so that's a little romp through Church Hub. Now, I wanted to show you a minister's profile. It looks fairly similar to what the Community of Faith profile looks like, and again, everything that you've entered into that that ministry personnel profile is going to be posted and available for people to see. So again, it's important that you take the time to fill that out and really give a good impression of what your leadership is about, and and what you feel you can respond to in terms of leading a congregation. So, Susan,
Well, I'm just thinking, Earl, we had a question from our feedback responses, and someone wanted to know how long does it take to get approvals?
oh,
Do you
okay,
want to address that?
sure, yeah, that's once the community of faith completes the record of call form, and that would need to be after the congregation has voted to approve the call. Then, then the search team is going to fill out that record of call form. And as I said, at the bottom of it, there's a button to click. So you fill out the form, and it's fairly self-explanatory on it, how you do it. And please, if you have any questions about filling it out, give Kathy or I a call. Because if you don't call us when you're filling it out, we'll call you and say, we need to know this information so that we can put it in. So you fill that out, you click the button, it immediately lands in the minister's inbox, in their email box. And so there's the period until the minister finds the email and opens it and clicks save. So you might want to just give the minister a call, the new minister, and say, we just sent the record of call off to you. Can you open your email and have a look at it and accept it if it's correct? When the minister opens it, they review it, they click a button, and that immediately lands it in my inbox for the Pastoral Relations Commission. So that can take less than an hour from the time the congregation clicks it until it lands in my inbox. And usually it takes a couple of days, but it is immediate because it just transfers right away. I then take it to the Pastoral Relations Commission, and they meet every month, the first Thursday of the month, in the morning. And if your forms are here before we begin meeting, we can approve them as long as they're in order. So essentially, if you have your congregational meeting sometime in a month and are able to fill out the form, get it to the ministry person, and have it come to us, we can have it approved within a few weeks. Like, we'll have it approved the first Thursday of the next month. So that's hope that's helpful. Are there other questions? You can write questions in the chat or.
We've got two questions in the chat, and I think you basically answered them. What about approval for ministerial position summary and community of faith profile? So anything that needs to be approved by the commission is likely going to be done in a month or approved in a month or less.
Yeah.
I mean, if you get it in on the Friday after the first Thursday, you're going to wait a month.
In a month, yeah.
Yeah. But they meet every month, and anything that's fresh and needs approval gets reviewed.
Yeah. So it only comes to us if you're searching for a ministry person. So if you filled out that find a minister part, if you're filling out the community of faith profile part, so all the statistics and your living faith story, that doesn't come to us for approval. That's your information that you have posted and that the General Counsel office is going to glean in terms of statistics and that information. So it's only when you're searching for new ministry personnel that it comes to the Pastoral Relations Commission for approval. Are there other questions there, Susan?
Once the ministerial position summary and community of faith profile are submitted, how long does it take until it's approved? I think we've pretty much answered that. So
yeah,
that's it.
Okay, good. I think we're kind of ready to talk about financial viability, financial and ministry viability.
Whoa.
So that so that's kind of a quick tour of Church Hub, and now we're going to kind of switch focus and look at kind of issues that come up or challenges, maybe roadblocks or obstacles that come up. Oh, and here comes Malcolm. That's great.
Oh, great.
And we want to begin with an exercise that we have sent out to you, and we've had a few questions about the financial and ministry assessment. You're seeing it on your screen?
Yes, we are, Earls. So that's great.
Okay. Oops. So just to kind of go over, why did we send this to you? It came from two groups in the regional council. One is the Pastoral Relations Commission, and the other is the Community of Faith Support Committee. And this information is helpful to us in terms of strategizing about where conversations need to happen in terms of can congregations come together and share ministry leadership? Where are we anticipating there are going to be kind of gaps of United Church presence in the regional council and that sort of thing? So we use it in that kind of high level view, but it's very useful information for you as members of communities of faith and as ministry personnel, because it gives you a glimpse at what the trends are with your community of faith in terms of finances and also your understanding of ministry. So here's a fictitious community of faith financial and ministry assessment. And we've invited Malcolm Barr. Susan's invited Malcolm Barr to come. And Malcolm is just going to take us through this and help us to understand on the financial aspect, what is it that we're looking at here. So, Susan.
Yeah, so folks, Malcolm is a CPA and a CA, as well as filling the role of chair of the Council for Camrose United. So he has generously agreed to come on tonight and just walk us through and see what he sees in this fictitious report that we've got. So Malcolm, do you want to take it away?
Yeah, okay. I had to get rid of my cat. So
okay, that's important.
So I'm making the assumption that everybody gets an annual financial statement from somebody that maybe outside the church or prepared within the church. So what we did is on the first page is the revenue. So we report all of the gross revenues, whether or not it's from. We break it down between basically operating and specified projects. So ours includes all of the total revenue that we raised for each year. We broke it down. We know what the par is. And the others, we have a fairly large number of people that don't use envelopes. So we have what's called donors that we can identify. So we know what our par is, but we don't break down how much was through the envelopes, basically. So so we track our par. We track, of course, obviously for 6 years. We have the numbers for that. And the operating expenses, so again, ours was the cost of operating plus the specified projects. We had large bills in the last few years. I think 140,000 for a roof and about another 80,000 for windows. So by the time you add all that up, I think we go yes, no, whether expenses exceed revenues. And then the bank balances at the end of the year. Of course, you can track that off your balance sheet. So We have cash that's available for operations, but we also have designated cash that's for specific projects that is held separately. So we reported both numbers in one number there. Later on in the report, you will see they ask a question if you have specified money set aside.
So
all
Malcolm,
of the-
as you look at this report, there was a high of 16,000 6 years ago and a low of a loss of $620. Is there any concern that you see when you look at this first page? Anything that jumps out at you?
So it's probably fairly normal to see yes and a no and yes and a no. The one that I worry about is if you have a downward trend where your expenses are exceeding your revenues for 2 years in a row, then you're going to have an issue probably in the third year. So ours was about like this, where yes, no, no, yes. But it's the downward trend. If your expenses are always exceeding revenues, you're obviously going to run out of cash.
Mhm.
And I think probably most churches are, the money that comes in through the PAR and the envelopes. We've our specified projects are ones we're finding that the givings through the PAR and the envelopes don't cover the operating costs, but people are sure willing to give for a specified cause, like a new
Mhm.
roof or windows or whatever.
So Malcolm, I'm noticing here that this revenue figure here doesn't isn't the result of adding the amount from envelopes and the amount from PAR. So that means that in addition to these two amounts, which are essentially the donations that individuals or families give to the church, this congregation has obviously done some fundraising as well, or maybe has a thrift store, and that's included in this total revenue number. So, and these numbers just are giving the community of faith an impression of what's come in by donation.
Yeah, ongoing support.
Yeah.
Yeah, there are outside sources, but your revenue has to be your gross revenue, and your expenses have to include all of the expenses, including capital costs, because we don't capitalize those.
Right.
So
Great.
uh,
Good. Thanks. Yeah.
system upgrades.
So they're asked to make a comment, and they've said one of our congregations closed, so back 4 years ago, and assets were transferred, and you can see that about, I think it's about here, 4 years ago. Well, I don't know if you can.
Yeah, I have it
There's-
on another screen here, so.
Oh, okay. Yeah. So now I'm pulling up page 2 for them, Malcolm. The payroll costs and such.
Yeah.
Yeah, so as you look at this, Malcolm, is there anything that jumps out at you that you would want to flag for the congregation?
So I guess it's your single biggest cost in the whole church. So you when I did ours, I compared our revenue from general operating to our salary cost to see whether or not we can maintain the existing staff levels that we have. So outside of this report, I did that analysis ourselves, just because it's your largest single cost that you have.
Mm-hmm.
So in the current year, it's gone up from a year ago, but not too much different from 2 years ago.
So in this case, it could be like we were in exactly that same position where we didn't have a minister for a while,
Mm-hmm.
and we had a big drop in our wages And then we ended up with a student for a year or two. So we had exactly the same scenario
Well,
where
okay.
we lost a minister, and then we had a gap, and then we didn't have a diaconal or a ordained minister. So our costs were down.
Mhm.
And this isn't the direction that you would normally see, because usually your payroll costs go up, but 6 years ago it was 31,000 and current year is 24,000. So
Yeah.
that's an interesting downward trend. It's probably
Yeah,
unusual.
there might be a layoff, somebody, and they had to go to a volunteer hours for something that's more common when the COVID hit, for sure.
Yeah.
Okay, do you want to advance to page 3, Earl, just for the sake of time?
Sure. And so the utilities are recorded there.
And we know those are going up, right?
Yeah.
So
So now
the
we're,
one thing that on our analysis I did was I broke out the insurance costs, because our insurance costs 6 years ago were 7,000, and this year they're 16,000, and that probably should have been part of this report.
yeah.
Yeah, so that's a good flag for people to look at, because insurance costs are going up quite drastically right now. So now we're looking at contributors, but I also read into this volunteers. So any comments about that, Malcolm?
We didn't, we used our givings report, our envelope givings report, only to count contributors of a financial nature. We don't track any of the other hours of any of the other groups that we have. Our largest is our 2 UCW groups, but we don't track their hours.
So as you look at this, how many contributors support your congregation? You can certainly see a downward trend.
Yeah.
And then when we look at the age of people, we know that we're all going to go to the other side at some point in time. And there are 16 people who are not going to be here probably in 20 years.
Yeah.
And so that's not on that only. What I wanted to highlight is that's not only associated with givings, it's associated with who has the energy to do the work in the church, because it's probably, for the most part, not going to be your 90-year-olds that are going to be stepping up and saying, oh, take me to serve on this committee and that committee, and cook dinners, to raise funds, those kinds of things that you've done for years.
Can I just chime in here, because this is the chart that we've had some questions about. People have called the office and said, why do you need to know the age of people in our congregation? We don't need to know the age of people in the congregation. We need you to know the demographics of your congregation so that you can plan ahead. And this, it just gives you a little picture of where your major giving base is in terms of age. We've also added a column for the next time in the future when we distribute this, over here for hours, just saying who's doing the volunteer work in your congregation as well. How old are your volunteers? So that will give you a picture too. Can I move on?
Those percentages, or the breakdown you have on the age group there, those percentages are probably, if you took that and figured out the percentage of each group, that's probably where we're at.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, please move it forward, if you will. This is an important one. So Malcolm, you want to make any comments about the data that we're looking at here?
Well, we didn't have the same breakdown data, but we have slightly different categories, which our report will break it down. So we have it for 6 years ago. I dug out the envelope report for 6 years and put that in there. The surprise, I had done this on a different for our own internal use, and the real surprise was how many contributors we've lost over 6 years.
Hmm.
It was absolutely eye-opening for
Mhm.
us.
Yes,
And it doesn't matter in what category we lose them. We're losing them in every category from 6 years
across the
ago.
board.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, so this is an important one to look at in terms of judging a congregation's longevity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, do you want to advance it, Earl?
Sure. Yeah, and just the effort that is put into stewardship education, um, the ideas that are being used. All right, and then we have no creditors.
And we do, thank heavens, we have that GIC.
Yes. So that's just straightforward information. Here's a little bit of just kind of is your pastoral charge paying above the minimum increment salary category? This pastoral charge isn't. It asks what percentage that is, if you are. Just some things I guess to kind of consider for your budget. Do you provide uh, instead of providing a top up on salary, do you provide extra vacation or study time? That's a possibility. Uh, a reminder that sabbaticals come up. Do you financially budget for the upcoming sabbatical? So that's what these questions are about.
What we hope to do for folks is to be able to collect this data and give a report then to say, X percentage of churches are paying 3% above the base and X percent are paying just at the base, or whatever it is that we see that is going to make sense. But we'd like to summarize this information to get a bit of a conglomerate picture for us to see what the norms are and what the ranges are.
Yeah, and that's all about strategizing for the future as a regional council, doing what we can to provide support in the way it's needed and is helpful for our communities of faith. It's not about deciding who we're going to close, because we're not going to do that, but we are going to strategize about who might need to talk to somebody else if they're wanting to continue on. So this is the ministry aspect. So we just asked people to comment on what they're doing in terms of ministry within the community, mission outside of the community. A little projection on what do you think all this means? What kind of leadership do you need? I have to admit, I had a little tongue in cheek when I was putting this one in, just take care of our elderly ones, bring in the young ones. He needs to be a great preacher and a good musician. So anyway, just your comments there. Your conclusions about what you've read when you've looked at your report. So, any questions there, or I should look?
I have a question. It's Carol Hickman from Edmonton.
Hey, Carol.
At the very first page, when we're talking about the very first chart, do your expenses exceed your revenues?
Mm-hmm.
If you, I didn't type this in because it's a little different. So under current year, if you complete that in October, and then 1 year ago, are you putting down end of December 31st a year ago or October a year ago? Is it year to year, or because it can make a tremendous amount of difference
It
in
would.
the revenues
Yeah.
and expenses?
Yeah. So you remember, so I'd just like to remind everybody that this is really for your use. So you're going to be aware of what the time frame is on the information that you've entered here. It may be something that you would do at the end of the year, every year, just to see, okay, so we can drop the last 6 years ago and now add a new one in and just keep it kind of going from year to year. But always, like you're saying, Carol, always use the same time frame or else your figures are going to be off.
Okay,
Yeah.
great. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Okay, Earl, we've got Ruth saying the document we completed is different than the one being displayed. Ours didn't have the ministry pages, probably from page 6 to 9.
Yes. So what you do is you call Kathy Jackson at the Regional Council office, and she will send you the last 3 pages of the document. So.
Oh, and Blaine
she's
is also saying the financial viability template is on the Northern Spirit Region website.
right. And we want to make sure that that one also has the ministry questions on it at
Yes.
the end too.
Actually, I can answer that, Earl. It does not, because I don't believe that it does,
Okay.
but I'll check.
Can we? But
I
we
can
can
change
get
it.
that up right away.
And Dolores says, where can we obtain copies of what we're looking at? And Dolores, we'll include this in the materials from this session
Thank you.
so that you'll have a sample to look at.
Okay.
Okay, well, Malcolm, thank you very much for joining us. We appreciate it. And if you've got other things to do tonight, you're released from duty.
Thanks, Malcolm.
Thank you.
Nice to see you again, Malcolm.
Okay, so that's a little introduction into one conversation that can be awkward or a bit of a challenge when you're looking at this exercise in developing a picture of your pastoral charge. And there are some others. We have a couple of our pastoral relations liaisons with us who've actually done this work with other congregations, so not the ones they're serving. And so Anne Telford is here, and Anna Constantine, are you there? So thank you very much for all the work you've done in the past for the Regional Council as we have launched into this new pastoral relations process, Anna and Anne, and others too. Roger is here, and I'm going to miss others who have done the work as well, but we've really appreciated it, and particularly because when we began, after the regional structure was implemented, a lot of the pastoral relations infrastructure wasn't in place. So it's been a bit of a innovative time. Anne and I asked you to think about some questions. What did you, when you're working with search teams or with pastoral charge boards, what do you find that they don't expect or that they find particularly challenging in the conversations that they need to have? Just kind of give us a little bit of a flavor of what you see as a liaison.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm looking at Anna. Do you want to go first? Okay. One of the challenges I found, I made some notes here. Not everyone could come to every committee meeting that we had. And so part of the tricky part was that the next meeting had to always be longer because we had to catch those people up. There was no conversation between them during the week as to what happened. So I wish at the beginning I would have said, if you can't come to the meeting, please be in touch with this person who's chairing the meeting and they can fill you in. It just took longer as we went along in the process to catch everyone up and be on the same page at the next meeting. So that was challenging.
I think too, another piece is sometimes people's dream, a congregation's dreams and what the reality is. Sometimes there needs to be a little bit of a reality check. And as profiles are being written too, um, sometimes values are put into place where it needs to be a bit more concrete tasks of what is the expectation. So just a bit more of the clarity and those on the ground bits instead of the big dream bits. And so sometimes those can get a little bit confusing of where is supposed to be written into a profile itself.
Okay.
One of my churches wanted to use their profile that they had used 7 years ago when they got their minister that is leaving now, and didn't want to add anything to it. And that was really challenging, because once we sat down and actually said, well, what's happened in 7 years? Do you have new programs? And they did. They said, yeah, but they don't need to know that. And it's like, yes, they do need to know that. Like, that's really important. And their idea was it would save them time, but it didn't really save them time by leaving that out. Like, so we use that as a base, but then, you know, we had an extra meeting and added to it, and that's what they needed to do.
I think the other part of profiles that is so beautiful is it's a time to pause and see where the congregation has been. And sometimes I've found that when we do that pause, there's things that kind of trickle up that maybe need to be addressed, or feelings, or maybe circumstances that have happened. So it can also be a time of just even story sharing as the profile is being prepared too.
Another challenge I had was that the group was too large. 10 people showed up, and it wasn't, you know, they had a youth group in the church, they had a young mums group in the church that met with toddlers, but there weren't any people from that age group on the search committee. So that didn't really tell the whole story. Like, those voices weren't heard when we sat around the table. It was people in their 70s and 80s that came to the meeting because, oh, well, we have the time. So that was unfortunate, because we still wanted those young voices to be heard.
I think another part of doing the profile is patience, because sometimes there's an expectation that you get the profile done, it's up and running, and okay, bring on the ministers. And sometimes it takes a little bit more time and patience than that too. And there might be some going back and revisiting and exploring, and some soul searching as well.
You had one of the questions you had asked us was where the resistance was. I'm a diaconal minister and very proud to be a diaconal minister, and I sat with that group of people who a gentleman had a very poor experience. His daughter was a minister, and she had a bad experience with a diaconal minister. So, I mean, right off the bat, he said, we are not hiring a diaconal minister. They are not good ministers. So here I am. What do I do with that? That's not what I'm trying to be generous. And, you know, so I had to say, well, wait a minute. Now we have to talk about this, because I can't be here if you think I'm not a good minister. So that was, he was the only one, but he had a loud voice in the group. And so they ended up not even looking at diaconal ministers, but that part's unfortunate. We come with baggage sometimes, and unfortunately it didn't get left at the door. So they were very resistant about that.
And I'm sorry that experience happened, and yet that's something. It reminds me that just bringing up, there's assumptions that maybe need to be voiced, and so there's some are hard assumptions that will come floating to the surface as there's dreams and expectations of what folks want for an upcoming minister.
Yeah. I also found that some of the groups I've worked with, faith communities, want the process to go really, really fast, and they want to miss steps. And, you know, they all said, no, we know what holy manners are about. We don't want to do that part. We don't want to do that part. We just want to get to the part where we can interview the minister. And I was very firm with them and saying, every part will get us to a better ending, because there is a process. And so I kind of now do that at the beginning and say there is a process, and yes, it will take this many meetings, but you will find in the end. And every time it's been a very happy ending. It's really worked to get there. But they've all been pleased. The ministers that they have are in our Northern Spirit region. They're all pleased. It's hard to get to the end because people come in with the assumptions and, well, I work, I don't want to spend the time, I can't do this, and so let's miss this part. And so that's tricky to keep them, where they have to be at the moment.
I guess the one other thing is that sometimes there's urgency and expectations from a pastoral charge, and I'm just going to say that as we do this job, we go and help because we really want to be part of this process. We believe in it. We don't have unlimited time to focus on it, and sometimes our response time might be a little bit lagging because we're working in our pastoral charges or whatever professions we're a part of. So I'm just going to say patience all around. The processes take time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Do you find that people are surprised that you're not at every meeting?
Yes
Like, are
and
people
no.
finding that an odd change?
I laid it out right at the beginning that won't be at every meeting. Like I let them know that I can't be there when you interview the minister. And it's a good thing because I knew all the ministers that were being interviewed. I've been a minister for 24 years. So I knew these people. So I knew that, they knew that right off that I can't be at every meeting. Like I'm here, call me. I'm your reference person. I was at the first meeting and then missed a couple because they wanted to get together and came back whenever they wanted me there. But and I did get phone calls and emails, so that was good.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And can you tell them about the first congregation you worked with and how you worked with them?
I'm trying to think which one that was.
Chetwynd.
Oh, okay.
Because Chetwynd's a long way away.
Well, it's one that's continuing on, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so it's one that I'm supporting, and we have conversation. It's a shared ministry, so they're exploring what that means as shared ministry, and I'll touch base with them, and I don't know what else to say on that, Earl.
Well, I'm sorry, I kind of have a picture. I just want people to be aware that sometimes your pastoral relations liaison is going to be a great distance away from you.
Mm-hmm.
And you're going to do the work over the internet or over the phone. And so that may happen. The other thing is that the liaison is not like the presbytery pastoral relations representatives who had to be at every meeting. Essentially, the liaisons teach you how to do it, send you off to do it, and say, when you're finished, give me a call. And if you have any questions in the meantime, call me. But it's a much more independent process than the presbytery system was. So I would think that would be a change. People would go, but maybe not. I don't know. It means you don't have, there's a little less coordination of schedules and things like that. So.
Well, and just a bit more responsibility of just going through the handbooks and which handbooks are needed.
Mm-hmm.
And I find liaison work is a lot of, well, let's go look at back here. I'll refer you back to the handbook as well.
Okay, yeah, good. Thanks very much. Again, thanks for your thoughts here tonight, and sharing your experience so that people can just hear from you who kind of have been part of this and what perspective you have and the things that you see that are challenging for congregations doing this work. So, yeah, thanks.
Earl, before we go on,
Mm-hmm.
we've got two questions that I wonder if you want to address. Church Hub, who needs access? And who can have access?
So in terms of I'm assuming this is a question coming from a community of faith.
I'd say on that side, yes, because obviously it's the minister that has access to the ministers, and only the minister
Right.
has access to that one.
That's right. So every community of faith has a church hub administrator. That's what we call it. I don't know what the title is in your local congregation, but it's a person who has that's the person who has the username and the password for the church hub account. And that person is the one who generally has access. So the community of faith needs to decide, the board needs to decide whether or not it's just going to be that person and they will provide information from Church Hub to those who need it, or whether maybe there are 2 or 3 people who have access to it. But it's certainly not anybody and everybody. It's meant to be a limited access in that way.
Select few. So tell me, what's the norm? Is it the minister that ends up taking on that role? Is it the admin assistant, or is it a member of the board or council or leadership team?
So I would say, and I hope I'm not going to offend anybody, but no, it's not the minister. The minister has their own church hub profile to take care of, and that's what that's where they can play around with it. This is a responsibility of the board, and whether or not they want to have a member of the board be the administrator, or the church office person be the administrator, they need to figure that out and decide, because of course that person is going to need to give access to whoever enters the statistics, or maybe they're going to do that. It really you need to decide how you're going to work your church hub account as a community of faith.
Great. And then another question, are all regions doing this? It's a very helpful document when a minister is looking for a change in pastoral relations in another region.
Yes. And that's part of why we have Church Hub, is because it is meant to kind of standardize and achieve consistency across the denomination for those who are seeking positions. And that was a large concern for the admissions ministers or for our BIPOC ministers. They felt that there was a real disadvantage in the way that applications were being considered by search committees. And so what this does is it makes sure that everybody who's looking for a position is giving the same kind of information to the congregations and receiving the same kind of information from the congregations, an attempt to make that a little more even playing field. Early on in the development, there was a discussion about whether or not there would be, whether or not the names of the ministry personnel would actually be available until a very late stage in the process, like just before the interviews. You would find out exactly whose profile you were looking at. And again, that was because often when a committee looks at a name and they see that it has an unusual number of consonants or whatever, they'll set it aside. So anyway, so that's kind of the hope behind it, is to achieve some fairness and some consistency.
Earl, having said that, are all regions using that format that we are using for the financial and ministerial report?
They're using the financial part of it is in one of the pastoral relations handbooks, although we've kind of added to it.
Okay.
The ministry part is a Northern Spirit invention. All those documents, though, as a pastoral relations minister, we work really closely together, the 18 of us, and would share documents quite regularly. So they may, if somebody's looking for that, I would send it to them.
Great. And Blaine, I think you have your hand up.
Nope, that was my point, is that I thought the question was about the financial viability
Okay,
thing.
great.
So
Yeah.
you beat me to it.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah.
So we've got another question, communities, and then we have to move on, I think, if we're going to finish somewhat on time. Communities of faith, in the case of multi-points, does each point create their own profile, or is the profile the sum of the points?
So, good question. I would say that really what we want as a region, what we want to look at is the whole pastoral charge rather than the individual congregations. Unless it's individual congregations who may be in conversation about coming together. In that case, we do want every congregation to do an assessment, because that's how they're going to articulate their identity, think about the resources they would bring into a relationship. But then what we would ask, if they decide to work together, we're going to ask them to do an overarching profile to put up on Church Hub for to seek a new minister at that point. So kind of a yes/no question.
Unmuted. Shall we
Answer.
move on to our breakout
Sure.
rooms, Earl?
Yeah, yeah.
Uh,
Do you want to introduce these a little bit, Susan?
That's exactly what I'm thinking. So the resistance to change, the text that we've got is a 2 or 3 year forecast shows that the church will not remain viable in terms of finances or human resources. The congregation does not see the need for change. What makes, we want the group to answer 2 questions. What makes them resistant? And what do they need to consider in terms of possibilities? The second one is the community of faith profile writing team has 5 members. 2 are on the ministry and personnel committee, 2 are on the finance committee. The other member joined the congregation 4 months ago. They are not making progress. How do you help them move forward? Let's see. The third one is the community of faith, and I'm not reading the titles, and I should for you, getting all perspectives. The community of faith, oh, sorry. Yes, this is getting all perspectives. The community of faith profile indicates the need for development of a youth and young adult ministry. There is no one under 45 on the search team, even though they approached 5 young members. Topic 4, realistic expectations. Reverend Mary arrived on the pastoral charge 2 months ago. The profile said they were looking for a minister who would lead them in visioning and renewal. She was excited about having a place to use her creative and innovative ideas. Now she is puzzled about their hope to be intercultural in a town of 450 people, none of whom belong to a visible minority. And the last one is a part in the greater church or not. Lay-led communities of faith. One, we've got 2 different pieces of text here. One of the search team members just read something about a lay-led community of faith in a general council handbook. Intriguing idea and cost saving too. He has brought the idea to the meeting. How do you advise them? So we have questions on number 1, resistance to change. We don't have questions on the others, but the question is the same. How do you advise the congregation? Okay, so folks, we're going to do a rapid round robin. And so I'm going to ask each group to give 3 important points that if you have 3, 2 or 3 important points from your discussion. And then if you'll remember, we want you to send the actual words in a document to Kathy, if you will. And we'll make those, the comments from each group available to all of you then. So resistance to change, what did you come up with?
They're not willing to admit that things are that bad. We haven't been able to fundraise because of COVID for 2 years. Members have passed away. They don't like change.
And so what do they need to do to consider possibilities? Did you get to
Possibil-
that?
Possibilities of churches joining together to make a new pastoral charge. A good idea was when one of the churches did a financial viability study, because it helped the congregation see where they stood, and being realistic.
Encouraging them to be realistic. Yeah. Sometimes it's easier to see when we're on the outside looking in, huh? Okay, and we didn't have anyone in working with conflict. How about getting all perspectives? What were 2 or 3 things that your group came up with?
Mainly discussion around expectations, and a lot about prior expectations. The word ghosts, the ghosts of prior large numbers of children, and an expectation, but things have moved on. The 2 other key things were, it's really a congregational commitment. If you want to have youth and children, it's not primarily the minister's responsibility. If the congregation wants it and they say they want it, but they have to do it. And very often our shared experiences were that people say it and want it, but they're not committed. And so it's really a congregational commitment. You can't just simply say, well, this is what we had in the past. And that's also, there are myths around magic ministers who have changed everything. There are ministers who apparently have been very magical and have absolutely changed congregations with children. And often it's not true. It's what people would like to have happened. Okay.
So bringing attention to some of the myths, and what I heard you saying is, I worked with a colleague who used to say, well, people have to have skin in the game. And I hear you asking the congregation, who from the congregation will step up and what will you do to promote this youth ministry? So great ideas there. Okay, realistic expectations.
That's me reporting for this group. I think if there's an underlying theme to our discussion and our conversation was that about being truthful with profiles. Does the profile really reflect who we are? I was going to say another couple of things. Again, something with the other group sort of alluded to, an underlying expectation that someone will come in to do the solving and be the solution. I think at the end, it's kind of an interesting thing. Like, we want people to be truthful, but it was also mentioned at the very end that communities of faith want to be hopeful. So you can almost understand why they might do this. And the comment that this is also true, ministry personnel can do this with their profile as well. But I think an important comment is that there's lots of reinforcement from our discussion that a good profile is super important. Honesty serves us well.
Okay, great. Thank you. And topic 5, Earl, what did you name that? Because I have it wrong on my agenda.
Lay-led communities of faith.
Thank you. So who do we have reporting there?
So I'm here, Mary Faith. I think we talked about the first 2 important things being, what are the ministry needs of this community of faith? Because that's your first question. Can you even do it? And then, are you doing it just to save money? Because you might not save money, you might not save energy. So where are your finances at? Where are your lay people at? And we made the assumption that no matter what, if there was not a minister, there would be a pastoral charge supervisor, so that you would keep your United Church polity, etc. And we went on from there.
Okay, that's great. So we'll look forward to getting those comments then in the documentation. Earl, you wanted to make a couple of comments about some resources that we could have pulled up tonight, but didn't, but we'll have in the documentation.
Yeah, so I did find Kathy worked diligently on making us a mock ministry personnel profile. So I will send you Betty Hayes's ministry personnel profile with the material. And she's not one of us, really. And also, we do have a part-time ministry guideline that we would be like you to be aware of, and that's a tool to help a board or a search team draw up a position description for a part-time position. Given that the minister working in part-time cannot do all the functions of ministry that a full-time minister can. So this guides you and says, if you want the minister to preach this week, you need to give them this many hours. That means you only have this many hours left. And it's a little bit of a buffet. We'll take some pastoral visiting and some preaching, and oh look, we don't have time for children's programming or whatever. So that will come out to you as well.
And Kathy, I'm just wondering, as the resources become available, because that'll be probably unfolding over the next 3 weeks, will you include the site that people can access those in the newsletter? Is that how
I can do that. I do have a mailing list of all of the participants. And so the links will be sent directly to them, as well as the packages of resources as soon as they get collated and edited.
Great. That sounds super. And I'm thinking, just to let you folks know, there was a topic that we did not cover, and it was supervised ministry education and considerations in that regard. And that was supposed to be this week, I think, and we knew that we didn't have time. So what we're going to do is we're going to ask Earl to do a short clip on that to give you the information that you need. And that's going to be available to all of you folks who have been attending these. So just so that you know that that will be available to you. And Earl, I think you can wrap us up.
Wrap you up. I'll wrap you up in the love of the Spirit that has been with us this evening. No matter where we are in this large area, the Spirit has been with you. And the Spirit is always with you. We need to heighten our awareness of the grace of God that's around us. So as you go, with the appreciation from us of your time for being here and of the interest that you show by being here in the wider community of the church, may you go knowing that you have friends, that you have fellow pilgrims in the Christian faith walking with you. Maybe you don't see them very often, but they're there. And we share this in the Spirit of Christ. So blessings upon you, blessings upon your communities of faith, blessings upon the ministry that you do, whether it's a ministry of lay leadership or as a ministry personnel. God is with you. God loves you. We love you. Have a good night, everyone.